welcome to our Mental Health Month panel. I'm Charlene Sheff, and I'm one of the co-founders of Women Who Win, our global platform for women empowerment, where we bring women together for inspiring and topical conversations. We are so excited to bring 3 women leaders in the mental health space to share their expertise and answer all of your burning questions. In this thought-provoking panel, we will be covering topics from breaking taboos to the role of family, culture, and social media, as well as seeking help and treatment. So let's get things started. We'll kick things off with welcoming our panelists. Ladies, please introduce yourselves and what inspired you to enter the mental health profession. We can start with you, Parnika.
Thank you. So my name is Parnika Saxena. I'm a double board certified psychiatrist in adult and geriatric psychiatry. I completed my medical training in India, and after that, I completed a psychopharmacological fellowship at McLean Hospital, as well as a residency at St. Elizabeth's Medical Center, which is a Tufts University affiliated residency in Massachusetts itself. I then moved to the West for a little bit, did a geriatric fellowship at UCLA, and currently I work at a federally qualified health center in Massachusetts. Even though I do often work, I specialize in working with older adults. I'm very passionate about championing the cause of mental health in women across all ages, which I believe is often affected by multiple societal challenges, which are very unique to this gender. Thanks.
Great. So Shalini, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Shalini Mancharamani. I'm a board certified psychiatrist. I practice in an outpatient setting in Fall River, Massachusetts. I also did my med school in India. I've been in the US quite a long time now. I did my residency at the Cleveland Clinic as well as at Boston University Medical Center. I finished it there. I did a fellowship in consultation liaison medicine there. And then I have a lot of experience. I've worked on an inpatient setting for quite a few years. I've done forensics. I've done outpatient psychiatry, but outpatient has been my favorite part. I really enjoy working with anxiety disorders. I teach people cognitive behavioral therapy skills, but I do psychopharmacology quite a bit. So that's me.
Awesome. And Smita, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, I'm Smita Patel. I'm a psychiatrist at present practicing at Leahy Hospital in Burlington. I graduated from India and then did my medical psychiatry residency, which is a Harvard affiliated program. And after that, worked at Boston University for a while and then had my private practice. I'm also board certified psychiatrist and addiction psychiatrist. Mainly, I work in a outpatient hospital, and at present also I am working with transplant, liver and kidney transplant consultation at Leahy Hospital. At present, I'm a staff at Tufts University and ex-staff at Harvard Medical School.
Wow, that's amazing. All of you are so impressive. So let's kick things off. The first question we have is, what are your top tips to women in managing their mental health? And what is the role that culture and family expectations often play? We can kick things off with Shalini.
Okay. So the 3 tips, I thought quite a bit about it. And the first tip that I would give to anybody listening to us is be assertive. Always ask for take care of yourself, ask for help at the right time. The second tip I would say is you belong here. So accept yourself. Wherever you are in your life, whatever is going on around you, accept yourself. The third one is you deserve. So feel comfortable, confident about what you have in your life. You deserve it. And try to grow with it. So those are my tips.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love what you said about accepting yourself. I think that's such a key part of mental health that we don't always think about. Smitha, what are your thoughts for top tips for women?
I agree with Salini as much as I can, because that's a great tips. I always feel that always keep in touch with your feelings and talk about your feelings and do something good for yourself. Whenever there is a conflict and you have to make the decision, make sure it is your decision. And even if it is wrong for someone else, it is right for you, and you made that decision in a right moment. At that moment, it was right. There is always somebody will have different opinion. You make sure that it is your decision, and don't be defeated by fear.
I love that. Yeah, especially that last part about don't being defeated by fear. But yeah, like I actually read a quote the other day that said, action conquers fear. And I really loved that. Um, so Parnika, like, what are your thoughts on this? Like, yeah, like what are your top tips to women on their mental health?
So what I'll do is I'll probably tie that in a little bit with the second part of your question about how cultural and family expectations tie into mental health. So I mean, I think both the ladies made some fabulous and excellent points, and I completely agree with what they said about accepting oneself, not giving up, asking for help, being assertive. And what I'd like to highlight is that, for one reason or the other, because women have been often, they're assumed to role the caregivers in our society, and sometimes, unfortunately, it happens to the detriment of their own health, whether it be physical or mental. And they're and it is heartening to see that more and more women are not just embracing those traditional roles of being caregivers, but also stepping out into society, building their own careers, being assertive for themselves. But yet a lot of the times, unfortunately, since they're raised in a particular way or in a particular fashion, they might end up being caregivers even at their job, where they might not necessarily need to be. So well, the first thing that I always talk to people about, whether men or women, but specifically women, is self-care is the most important thing. And even if you want to be a caregiver, if you're not engaging in self-care, you can't give to others, right? You can't squeeze water, you can't squeeze water from a stone. You can't empty your own cup and think that you're going to keep filling other people's cups. So that's something that I always, talk about. And it can be anything, whether it's like 15 minutes of meditation, listening to music, just like zoning out, watching television, whatever it might be. I encourage women, especially, not to feel guilty about taking care of themselves, because often there's such a strong caregiver slash sacrifice more in them that they often will, even when they are taking care of themselves, they feel guilty. They feel they should be taking care of somebody else or something else, and that is not necessarily the case. Um, Also, when you talk about, so that's one of the cultural expectations. And I know you'd mentioned something about, I think, like, especially for Asian families, I feel, there is an even greater impetus to be in, to fulfill those traditional roles, as well as, really achieve, great, great heights in your career. I remember hearing a top Indian female CEO talk about this. And I was taken aback. I was like, if they can, if they're having these expectations, what hope is there for the rest of us? So I think it works both on an individual level and a collective social level. That it is, I feel like it is our collective responsibility as society to start at the fundamental level of raising women to be just as equal as men are, and not thrusting them into roles that they might not necessarily want to be in, just because it's expected. Um, and on an individual level, teaching women, whether and starting small, starting young, that they should be taking care of themselves and they should be assertive. If they don't feel comfortable, they should speak up. And there should be no shame or guilt or anything else associated with that.
Yeah, that's all amazing. And I completely agree with all of that. And I think that's such a relevant topic, especially now. So going into our second question, what are some common taboos and misconceptions that you guys have seen that your patients have, or just women in general often have when it comes to mental health? And how do you seek to address them? We can start with Smitha on this one.
Let me talk about what is taboo. In a dictionary, it says practice that is prohibited or restricted by the social or religious custom, which goes with the stigma. And what is it? That person who is discredited from others in a society, and it is then marked with the shame and being stigmatized as a different person, and that carries a lot of burden on that person who is stigmatized, that who will be ostracized from the whole society. And do they have a less strength to struggle with the society and when they are ostracized. Now also, there are so many myths in the society that mental health is for a weak people, and how others will judge them uh, crazy, mad, and that's how it will prevent the family from seeking help. And because they have a fear of bringing shame to the family, what is going to happen? What everybody will think about us, and then the question arises within the family. Is it better for family life to maintain the nuclear taboo that they have, or to confront the issue? And if they confront the issue, they are going to, and they don't have enough of the strength to deal with themselves, society, in addition to the person who has the mental illness. And that is why we have a saying, Bandi Muthi Lakki, keep all the problems within the family and do not talk or reach outside to get the help. Even though nowadays with the mental health awareness uh, there is a less stigma, but still most of the family member have the uh, in the society, and especially, I'm not going to talk, it is a very touchy uh, um, topic about the domestic violence and how it is kept within the family, and how women are and that's where the Saheli has played a good role in our culture in Massachusetts. Now, there is another question comes is that the substance abuse also is a major concern, which is like alcohol. It is in the movies, any problem comes, they seek for alcohol, and people learn how you can solve the problem. Drink away the problem, alcohol. And now the drugs and everything has come out so much that people have hard time, and it is like, keep your zip it up your lips, don't talk about it, we will handle it, stop using. They are at the stage they cannot do it, and that has created a uh, more social problem. And I'm sure everybody is aware that during the COVID, the alcohol and substance abuse has increased so much, and the death from the heroin addiction has been unbelievable. So it has you keep in family, but it has a long run impact on the family and in society.
Yeah. No, that's like really thought provoking to really think about. Thank you. And Shalini, would you like to kind of share your thoughts on this area too?
Yes. So I agree with Smita about the definition of taboo and what it means. So before I talk about taboo, I want to tell people that mental health treatment really works. If people engage with treatment, if people follow through, people live very, very good lives. Now, taboo comes from stigma. Stigma comes from unawareness. So oftentimes people kind of like just emotionally feel that they're either weaker, or the family would be ashamed of them, or they would be shamed. So all of that comes from unawareness. Now, the reality is that, we've done such amazing job with treatments. So many things get so much better. People live such better quality lives if they start accepting help. So sometimes, the challenge is for people to just open up, talk, seek appropriate resources. So that's all I'm going to say.
No, I love that. And Parnika, what about you? What are your thoughts on how you think about things like taboos and misconceptions?
I think both Shalini and Smita have highlighted the problem so well, and there's not really that much for me to add. But what I can say is that as they mentioned, that the mental illnesses, unfortunately, one of the biggest problems in curing them, or helping people who do have mental health issues, are really the taboos and misconceptions. And of course, as we know, in some cultures it's a lot more prevalent than others, but really it's a problem across the board. And and I think it also boils to, and it's not just mental illness, it's even mental health. For example, just a simple example, men can't cry but women can, or if women cry they're being weak. Any kind of expression of mental health, whether it's good mental health or bad, is always looked down upon. It's always chastised. And I think that's kind of where our fundamental problem comes, that we are so quick to judge. And I'm so happy to see this trend, where there's so much awareness just to take care of your mental health, not necessarily even mental illness. I'm just talking about mental health, like exercising, doctor, even like non-psychiatrists talking about the importance of exercising, good nutrition, socializing, things like that, for a person's mental well-being. But I think mental illness is still somewhere that we struggle to get past that stigma, because I think for a number of reasons. Number one, unless you've gone through it yourself, it's difficult to understand because it's not something you can see. Also, that there's so much taboo about, like, and I think a part of it also has to do with the media representation that we've had in the past. It is improving, but there's still, like when you think about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, there's only representation of very, very severe psychiatric cases. Whereas I'm sure I can speak for myself, but I'm sure the other psychiatrists will agree with me. Not everybody is going to be somebody who's going to be committed to a state hospital, and that's not what mental illness means. It can be something like depression, not being able to get out of bed, which almost most people in today's day and time have suffered some level of anxiety, some level of depression, because that is an experience that we go through during our lives when we deal with difficult things. So I think that's where we still really have a hard time. The other misconception I see, this idea that people think, oh, if you take a psychiatric medication, it'll make you crazy. We have come a long way, I mean, like this whole, I remember I was talking about electroconvulsive treatment, shock therapy, which can be so beneficial for some of the sickest patients. And even when I talk to educated people about that, they have this Neanderthal idea about it, that you're going to like hit somebody over the head and knock them out, and like basically put their finger in a socket. I'm like, that's not how it works. It's like a surgery. Like, people are not scared of surgeries, but shock therapy sounds like, it's like people can't, I mean, I have seen plenty of patients who are extremely functioning, and that weekly or even monthly dose of electroconvulsive treatment is their lifesaver. But if you had somebody doing this on the medical end, like on the non-psychiatric end, it wouldn't be so shocking. So I think that's something that I try and provide education to people, even when I'm not in a professional setting, to help them understand that we've come a very long way from what treatments used to be. We have a much better idea. We still have a long way to go, But medicines nowadays are very well tolerated. And I think it kind of, especially when you have somebody who walks in for the first time to see a psychiatrist, there's so much hesitation and fear because there's been so much misunderstanding in the media and misrepresentation. Even today, like I see articles come about by somebody who read 2 books and decided that they're an expert in psychiatry. So I think those are some of the taboos and misconceptions that we deal with, and I really hope that people are more feel less scared walking into a psychiatrist's office. It's really not that it's really not that terrifying of an experience.
I agree with that. In fact, it can be such a relieving experience sometimes, just opening up about what they're going through. And, I mean, the treatments are such amazing treatments. Majority of people who come through our doors, do live much better quality of life. Electroconvulsive therapies for resistant cases, but there are such few and far between resistant cases that it's not commonly used anymore. But there are so many good treatments. Therapy works really, really well for anxiety disorders, for post-traumatic stress disorders, even depression. So treatments are really good now.
And actually, I'd like sorry, please go ahead.
Sorry. Nowadays, there is now more awareness that it is not a product or something craziness, but it is part of the problem with the neurotransmitters and which is considered a medical part. Science is behind it rather than just a quack medicine that used to be, psychiatry was considered a quack medicine. It is not. It is now all the medications works on a neurotransmitters, done the research and everything. So there is a science, just like a pain medication works on a pain, or if you have a burning stomach and you take the Pepsid and it works, same way for the antidepressant, it works the same way. And so all these studies came out, and that people need to be aware of that. It is, you take diabetes medication or you take the antidepressant, it is the same in a sense.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, I would just like to point out one other thing that I see is often frustrating for people to understand. Quite a few psychiatric illnesses can be relatively chronic in nature. And I've seen people get upset, like, oh, do I have to be on this treatment forever, et cetera, et cetera. It's kind of like, let's say if somebody had diabetes or high blood pressure, if you're diagnosed with that, your endocrinologist, if it's diabetes, they're going to tell you, well, there's certain medications you probably will have to be on for the rest of your life, but you do have a semblance of control. If you eat well, if you stick to a particular diet, you have exercise, you do meditation, because mental health has a big impact on diabetes or, other physical health issues, and vice versa. You can have, a so-called, you can have a normal life, You don't really have to be debilitated or disabled by that. And mental health illnesses are very much the same. Like for depression, like Shalini was talking about, for most people, a combination of medication and therapy can really help them achieve wellness for a long time. And they can, so they can actually reach their full potential in life. And it doesn't have to mean that, you have to be, being on treatment for depression doesn't mean that you're crazy. It just means, like Smitha said, there's a neurotransmitter imbalance. Just like if you have diabetes, there is a problem with your insulin production and modulation. So it's just like most chronic illnesses require a combination of lifestyle changes, some self-care, and medication. That's what mental illnesses are. That's how mental illnesses are usually treated as well. So they're actually very similar in that outlook, but because of that word mental, it unfortunately tends to scare people away.
Right.
Yeah, and thank you so much for that. And I think that actually transitions us to our next question really well, which is kind of pre all the treatment and pre all of the kind of all of that kind of like next steps, what are the signs of someone struggling with mental health in the first place? This question's for you, Shalini.
Yes. So, I think most people experience emotions, and sometimes they have a hard time being able to tell what's emotions and what's illness. So, emotions are very normal, but prolonged feelings of a certain kind. So, that's what they have to be careful about. So I'm going to talk about the easier symptoms, signs and symptoms that we may see, and then I'll reserve the ones that are more severe or more dangerous for later. So the simple ones are sad mood, lack of interest in things, things that we used to enjoy before. Now they don't seem to give us as much pleasure. Kind of like changes with sleep, appetite, irritability, sometimes kind of like not wanting to get out of bed, not wanting to do things. People can have feelings of guilt. Um, People can have like crying spells. So those are some of the symptoms, signs and symptoms of depression. People can have anxiety symptoms. So anxiety can be, now anxiety is also a very broad term. So anybody says I have anxiety, I always ask them, describe your anxiety to me. So I'm surprised as to how many things people put under that bracket. But anxiety symptoms, which is kind of like this unease about us. Now, generalized anxiety is when people have a tendency to worry a lot. They're always anticipating things, they're always preparing, but they do about 80% extra worrying than what is needed. They sometimes will have difficulty with sleep, they may have like muscle tightness. People may have panic attacks. So panic attacks are spans of duration during which people mostly get physical symptoms. They may get shakes, they may start sweating, they may have this sense of doom, something really bad is about to happen. They may feel their heart pumping really fast, their breathing changes, they may start to do like pumping, short, shallow breathing, or sometimes not be able to breathe, they freeze. So panic attacks are also symptoms that we encounter. Then the more serious ones. So I even compare some of these symptoms to, they're as bad as having a heart attack. So if somebody is experiencing suicide thoughts, thoughts of death, or thinking of ways by which they can hurt themselves, that requires an emergency level of care. I advise them to call 911, because it's best to be amongst professionals. It's never ever a good idea to have those kinds of thoughts and not do anything about it. The other symptoms that are dangerous can be symptoms of psychosis. So psychosis is when people lose touch with reality. They start to have perceptual misperceptions. So people can start hearing things, oftentimes their name being called when nobody says anything. They may perceive that there are forces or there are changes happening, and they may become paranoid about things. So that's again something that is dangerous. That's people who are experiencing that need to be seeing a professional right away or need to be in the hospital, because most of the times, when we think of like bad things happening, those are the symptoms that usually culminate in those. The third thing that we talk about is inability to care for themselves. So if people have a very significant drop in functioning, so if they were going to college before, they were seeing friends, they were socializing, and now they're just not able to get out of bed, they're not able to study, they cannot focus. So a very significant drop in functioning. They're not showering. That is also something that can be, that requires immediate attention.
Wow, yeah, no, that's like really interesting to hear the difference between psychosis and mental health. Um, and yeah, thank you so much for that. And I think that it is really interesting to see kind of what those signs are that people are struggling because there's so many different ones and people struggle with it in so many different ways. So
Right.
the next question is for Smitha, actually. And this question is, so in your experience, yeah, like, why do you think mental health is often so overlooked? And is this something that parents and students should be educated on?
Let me answer the first one. Why it is overlooked? In a sense, it has evolved over the years. In first time, it was given the name in 1883, that was documented that okay, there is something, mental illness exists. And after that, it took many years, even though at those days they were doing the witchcraft and voodoos and those things to treat the mental illness, and that was not effective, so the people were shying away from the treatment. Then in first time in 46, Harry Truman passed the National Mental Health Act, and he allotted government funds to to the different community health centers to treat the mental health. And in 1950, the community psychiatry movement has started. Uh, Even though, let's say, the well-known figures, Beethoven on those days or Winston Churchill and many others had the documented mental health issues, but it was never addressed or came out in the public, because as what we talked about, the taboo and stigma and not asking for help, that was the major concern. And after that, things evolved slowly, and I would say you can say it is overlooked, or it is not looked the way what we are seeing or what we are looking at the mental health at present, that okay, it is the uh, uh, chemical imbalance, neurotransmitter problems, and also at times sorry, my am I on still?
Yep, you're on.
Hmm,
Yes.
yes, I'm sorry. Mm, so I would say that it is looked differently now, and I'm glad that we have a better awareness of the mental health issues, and people are seeking help better than before. uh, the second question, uh, also it is considered a luxury goods rather than a illness. That is a major concern. And there has been a fragmented, outdated service models in the past, including not even that when I started my practice, those days, the insurance company also were giving only like few services for mental health. It is not considered a medical illness. Now it is changed. Insurance company has been approved, and that makes a big difference in a mental health. Considering the education in the school, I think many years ago, as far as I remember, maybe in year 2000 or so, that the drug and alcohol education has started in high schools. It started in the high school, that everyone has to attend that those programs. And uh, then it was introduced in middle school. As they talked about that the sex education starts in the fifth grade, same way the mental health education has slowly introduced into the middle school and recognizing, but still at that age group, the taboo or how they are looked at differently and ostracized, and that is why in teenager you see the more of the suicide attempt also, because the mental health issues, even though they are educated, talked about it, it is not accepted as well. Admitting is different than acceptance. And now coming to the children, how I feel that you should first educate the parents. What is the mental illness? What is the alcohol and substance abuse? And then it should be a discussion either at the dinner table, or I learned from one of the parents that whenever they all watch the news together, and whenever there is some news about whatever is happening, including mental health and um, how it is treated, there are so many school shootings that has happened in last few years. That's been terrible, and it is because of the uh, child killing the other children, is because of the part of his, because of the mental illness, and that was not recognized or accepted by the family itself to uh, prevent such a horror. And if the education to the parents comes first and then discussion with the children, so that all of them feels easier to ask for help. Any
Yeah.
more?
No, I love what you said about like admittance is not acceptance, right? I really love that line. And I think it is like you said, it's so important to ask for help. So the next question, I had to ask this one as a child of the Instagram generation. So Parnika, so we live in a social media culture, and I think that has a huge toll on young women who often feel pressured to kind of measure up to the look and the lifestyles that they see on Instagram. And there's kind of this like additional pressure to succeed that kind of comes from that. So what are your thoughts on kind of how young women can take care of their mental health in the social media generation that we have?
No, absolutely. I think it's a very important question very important question and problem to consider, because it's starting out for young women at younger and younger ages. Even as young teens, they are there's so much pressure on them to look older, to act older, and they basically miss out on their childhoods, and the pressure just keeps worsening and worsening as they get older. So the first thing that I would say is, if you're feeling pressured by what you're seeing on social media, you are not alone. This is a rampant problem, and I mean, I think if you just look it up if you just type a couple of words on Google, you'll see, hundreds and thousands of articles on this, on how young women feel pressured to look, to look a certain way, to have a certain lifestyle, especially when they look at influencers who might be, very young women who are, at least boasting, a lifestyle worth millions of dollars. It's not just the way they look, but it's also the their economic achievements, which can seem almost impossible to match up, especially if you're in a more traditional profession. So the first thing, so that's the first thing I tell them, that they're not alone, and that a lot of people struggle with this. Also, the pictures that we see are often digitally enhanced. We have all these celebrities who have access to, the best plastic surgeons and cosmetologists to look their very best self, and not everybody has that, has that kind of money or even time for that matter. So I also, so the second thing I tell them, like, let's do some reality testing. When somebody posts something, for example, on Instagram or TikTok or whatever they might be posting, everyone posts the best day of their lives. You don't post your picture when you're not looking good. And I ask them, like, why don't you look at your own social media? How many times have you posted a less than perfect picture? And if you're not doing that, nobody else is doing it. Right. So that's, and then second, kind of drawing their attention. I know that there's some people who've used these platforms in a positive way to say, I do use these things. And like I've seen some celebrities talk about, hey, don't feel intimidated by how we look, because we are spending all this time and all this money on looking good, which not everybody can do. So trying to, move away from the negative and focus on the positive. I talk about like limiting time on social media, because it's so easy to like just start scrolling and then you can get lost for hours. So setting, like, if you're going to go on Instagram or something, or just setting a timer for yourself, or whatever your social media of choice is. So maybe just limiting it maybe to a certain amount per day or a certain amount per week. And also when, and I have to be realistic. We can't really stay away from the internet. We can't stay away from the virtual world. And during COVID, I think we all got a lot more isolated, and our socializing became primarily on these social media sites. So I encourage them to use other modalities, like maybe have a call, talk to somebody on FaceTime, or even certain virtual gaming options might be better than looking at obsessing over an influencer's page. Also, unfortunately, a lot of these social media websites do offer false information about things, which can, be again a source of misinformation. So, I just, talk to people about making sure they don't get so wrapped up in the virtual world that they forget the real world, which is still very much there. And then making sure they set up times to socialize in the real world, like meet friends, meet family. Just step away from your phone or your laptop, because God knows how many hours we spend anyway because of work. So it's just not good for your overall mental health. And then just telling them to assign a sometime, a couple of minutes, or not couple, at least 20 to 30 minutes a day, focus on activities that are outside the virtual world. So like singing, playing an instrument, walking, reading, just something that doesn't involve the use of electronics. But then if it gets to a greater level where people start noticing that they're actually like, some people will develop severe anxieties. In fact, there is a syndrome which has been identified in the youth in Japan, where they basically just withdraw completely, and they're so immersed in the social media world. And I say Japan because it was identified there, but we're seeing it everywhere now. So it's sort of helping people to, it's called like a body scan, where you try and basically you try and be more aware of how you're feeling physically. For example, when you're anxious, you start grinding your jaw, so feeling that tension. So when you're on social media, taking a break and doing a body scan, am I noticing these physical symptoms of anxiety or stress building up? If that's the case, then I need to stop now. And if people do notice that there are greater, it's actually developed into like an anxiety disorder, a depressive disorder, like Shalini was talking about, certainly to seek help, professional help, whether it's therapy, or whether it's seeing a therapist, psychiatrist, or both.
Right. So one of the things I'm going to add is, when we didn't have social media, we had friendships. And friendships take quite a bit of energy, time, getting to know a person, sharing some of our pain with them, but also a lot of laughter, a lot of eating together, celebrations, right? So friendships, the real friendships, there is that roller coaster of a ride together. And we remember some of those, landmark times that we spent together. So sometimes it's a good thing to think of, where are my real friendships? Who are my real friends? Who am I really investing that kind of energy into? And who is invested in me? Social media sometimes can become such a fake place. People sometimes, it's just so hard to tell what is real and what is just a post. So be a little bit more realistic about that. Don't just read, too much into it.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think this is all such great advice, especially, as it is really easy now that we're all navigating this challenge of the virtual world and the real world, and kind of bringing those two together. And that's something that we're all kind of figuring out So that's all really great advice. Going into our last final question for this panel, what is your one mental health tip that you do in your daily life? What is that one thing that you practice that keeps you sane?
And I keep reminding myself to breathe normally. That gives me a lot of good perspective. I think people who have mental health issues, especially anxiety disorders, that oftentimes is a good tip to just breathe normally. Watch out their breathing. So
That's great. And how about Smitha? What is that one mental health tip in your life that keeps you sane?
I love this serenity prayer, and that is, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. And that is each and every step you keep on evaluating, morning, afternoon, evening, any time when there is a conflict, and the courage to change the things I can. But the best part is the wisdom to find the difference. Whether I can change it or I cannot change it. That is my best motto. It's each and every step that will help me give the serenity and resolve the conflict within myself, not outside, just within myself.
No, I love that. I think that that's something that we all struggle with, is getting wrapped up in the things that we can't change. So I love that tip. And Parnika, how about you? What is that one mental health practice in your life that you can't live without?
So I actually do something which is a combination of what both Smitha and Shalini do. So I would say, so for me, one of the biggest challenges over the last couple of years during the pandemic has kind of seeing people have a rough, be really affected by how things have, by how we've had all these challenges in society. First, it was the pandemic, which, was very isolating. Then there's been a very massive, a seismic shift in how polarized this country has gotten, which has also been very triggering for a lot of people in different shapes or forms, on whatever side of the argument they might be. And I think as a psychiatrist in America, to a certain extent, I was spoiled because there were so many resources available to help people. And I work in a health center where I work with people who are economically underprivileged, and I still had access to resources that I could help them. And for the first time in my 10 years here, I wasn't able to do that because those resources were not there. Lots of grants got cut. I couldn't see people. A lot of my patients don't have phones. I couldn't get into. I had no idea what was going on. And I think for me as a physician, it was a very trying time because most of us have this, we have a little bit of a savior complex, no matter what anyone says. That's why we entered medicine. We want to help people. And it was often a feeling of utter helplessness because I didn't have the tools to help people. And over a period of time, I realized that I could either drive myself up the wall, being angry with myself or feeling frustrated with my helplessness, or I could accept this is what the situation is, and I have to do my very best, because if I don't do that, I won't be able to even help the people who I could help. It took me a long time to get there because I had to undo a lot of very, primary, or not, I shouldn't even say primary, like very primordial feelings I had in me. But I definitely think I'm at a better place now. And of course, things are getting better, which certainly helps things out. So it was kind of what Smitha said, like accepting, but at the same time, letting myself breathe, letting myself give space to feel that vulnerability and telling myself it's okay that I'm feeling that way and things will get better. And thankfully, they are gradually getting better.
I think I agree with you, Parnika. When the pandemic happened, the whole healthcare system, which was so well organized, it was a well-oiled machinery that ran really, really well. It just, especially with the mental health, it came to such, it's, even to this date, it's hard to find beds for people. It's hard to find partial programs. So people who are like relatively sicker, the things that we used to do, it's sometimes a little bit a tricky thing to find that for them. On the other hand, this whole Zoom business, just unbelievable, like what outreach is. I have not seen so many people log into the Zoom calls from the comfort of their homes, from the comfort of their cars, from the comfort of their workplaces even. They'll take a lunch break and log in and talk. So I think the access with this the whole Zoom business has increased. It still doesn't feel the same, that human to human sitting right in front of each other and being able to speak with each other is, there's a miracle in that. There's so much energy in that. But at least people have access. So it's very
Yeah.
different, right?
Yeah, and I think actually I've seen so many more people have been doing like virtual therapy sessions too that, wouldn't have honestly had the time or the ability to go to sessions in person. I've seen that a lot, especially from like the younger generation. I've seen more of that happening. So it is really great to see that technology is also enabling that. So thank you, ladies, so much for sharing your awesome insights with us. This was a very informative discussion, and we're so excited to celebrate Mental Health Month with you. For more engaging sessions like this, please join Women Who Win and check out our website, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. Thank you.